Developed versus developing countries. Our learning target today, I can identify and define social and economic data useful in measuring the development of a country. Countries are divided into two major categories by the United Nations, developed countries and developing countries. Developed countries are countries that have a highly developed economy, a high standard of living, high level of industrialization, and widespread infrastructure. Countries are classified as developed based upon their economic and social statistics or data. Some of the indicators of a developed country are high GDP per capita, high life expectancy, high urban population, low infant mortality rate, low percentage of the labor force in agriculture, and excellent medical, transportation, communication, and educational facilities. Some examples of developed countries are Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United States. According to the UN, a developing country is a country with a relatively low standard of living, an undeveloped industrial base, and a moderate to low Human Development Index, or HDI. The Human Development Index, or HDI, looks at a country's statistics, such as life expectancy, education, and GDP per capita, and it ranks that country in terms of its human development. While HDI rankings are not divided into the categories of developed or developing, nations with medium to low HDI ratings fit the classification of developing countries. Nations with a very high HDI rating fit the classification of a developed country. Sometimes developing countries are referred to as underdeveloped or third world countries. The indicators of a developing country include a low GDP per capita, low life expectancy, low urban population, high infant mortality rate, high percentage of the labor force in agriculture, and poor education, medical, transportation, and communication facilities. Some examples of developing countries are Colombia, India, Kenya, Niger, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. Economic and social data. GDP per capita, a measuring of average income per person in a country. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product, which is a measure of national income. GDP per capita divides the GDP by the country's population. GDP per capita, for example, in the United States, which we know is a developed country, the GDP per capita is $54,597 per person. In India, which is a developing country, they have a GDP per capita of $1,627 per person. If we look at life expectancy, which is how long an individual is expected to live, in the United States, the life expectancy is 78.8 years old. Compared to India, a developing country, their life expectancy is only 66.5 years old. Where would you want to live? Literacy rate, the percentage of people who are able to read and write. In the United States, a developed country, our literacy rate is 99%. In India, their literacy rate is 69.3%. If we look at infant mortality rate, the number of deaths under 1 year of age compared to the number of 1,000 live births in the United States, we have an infant mortality rate of 5.6. That is 5.6 deaths for every 1,000 live births. If we compare that to India, a developing country, they have 37.9 deaths for every 1,000 live births. Urban population is the percentage of the total population living in an urban area. In the United States, we have an urban population of 81.4% of our population that lives in an urban setting. In India, they have an urban population of 32.4%. If we look at percentage of labor force in agriculture, which is the percentage of the total population working in agriculture, in the United States, we have 0.7% of our labor force working in agriculture. If we compare that to India, they have 49% of their labor force working in agriculture. Let's take a look at the map comparing developed with developing countries. We're going to compare the United States, India, and Afghanistan. Let's go through all the statistics. First, GDP per capita. The United States is at $54,597 per person. India, $1,627 per person. And Afghanistan, $649. If we look at life expectancy, in the United States, we're just under 80 years. In India, they're at 66 and a half. And Afghanistan is just over 60 years of life expectancy. Literacy rate, the United States is at 99%, India 69.3%, and Afghanistan 31.7%. Infant mortality rate in the United States, 5.6 deaths for every 1,000 births. In India, 37.9 deaths for every 1,000 births. And in Afghanistan, 66.3 deaths for every 1,000 births. If we look at urban population, 81% of our population lives in an urban setting, compared to India at 32.4% and Afghanistan at 26.3%. If we look at labor force in agriculture, the United States is at 0.7%, India 49%, and Afghanistan almost 79% of their labor force is working in agriculture. If you study that chart, you'll notice as the development decreases, you see a significant difference in the statistics from the United States being a developed country all the way down to Afghanistan, which is a developing country. And you can see the difference between India, which is still developing, and Afghanistan. Afghanistan, which would have a much lower development than India and obviously the United States. I hope this helps. If you need to go back and listen again, please do so. You're now going to use this information to answer some questions. Good luck.